Warning: this program typically features strong language, sexual innuendo, politically incorrect commentary, and real stories from the road. Viewer discretion is advised. It was our third day on the archipelago of Haida Gwaii, a series of islands roughly 80 miles off the western coast of British Columbia, named so after the Haida people who called this place home for 13,000 years prior to the arrival of Europeans. The land holds an ancient enchantment, still present when bearing witness to the groves of old-growth trees and along a coastline that remains much the same as it was almost 2 millennia ago. On this day, Jessica and I made tracks north to the town of Old Masset, where more than a quarter of Haida Gwaii's indigenous population lives. First Nations people make up around 45% of the archipelago's total inhabitants. Prior to the arrival of Europeans, it's estimated that some 30,000 Haidas called this place home. But their numbers were reduced by more than 90% from diseases imported by Western settlers, while their culture and traditions were uprooted and nearly erased as a result of colonization. This is a far too familiar and regrettable human dynamic when vastly different cultures intersect. Today, there's around 2,000 indigenous Haida left, and they've begun an independence movement in an effort to reclaim their ancestral lands from the larger Canadian body politic. The archipelago seems to exist in a sort of tension between the ancient and the modern. Old-growth forests thrive on the southern island and in small patches on the northern island right alongside clear-cut mountaintops. Monocultures planted to serve as commodities where once ancient spruce and red cedar existed to support the minimal needs of the Haida people. Homes in the town of Old Masset further illustrate this tension where totem poles remind me of a not-too-distant past that, to me, seems more attuned to the mystical realm of reality's substructure, their carvings expressing the folklore of a people whose culture and consciousness were integrated seamlessly within its immediate surroundings. All the while, these totems sit in front yards next to modern Fords, Chevys, and single-family homes that each tell a vastly different story. In places like this, I find myself vexed by history, by the narratives we concoct about how it was, or how it is, or how it should be. How should it be? I have no idea. What I do know is, if you visit a place like Haida Gwaii and listen closely enough, there's something to learn from the language spoken by spawning salmon, moss-covered trees, and crashing waves. And so, we set up camp for the evening at Agate Beach Campground. In awe of the coastline and the setting sun, we went for a walk along the beach searching for alabaster stones, listening to the ocean, taking in the wonder of our surroundings and finding heartfelt gratitude for the invariable complexity of history. For it is in and through that complexity that Jess and I have somehow found a sliver in reality's matrix that affords us these musings and experiences. What a wondrous place, this Haida Gwaii.
The next morning, Jorge and I got an early jump on the day, as we wanted to make tracks out to a place known as Ni Kun, the sacred stretch of land to the Haida Nation, where it's said that the raven, a mischievous creature that symbolizes creation and knowledge in their culture, first freed men from a clamshell and set them loose on the archipelago. Ni Kun is commonly referred to as Rose Spit, and the drive out to it takes you along 17 kilometers of coastline. On one side, a deep blue and featureless ocean stretches out as far as you can see. And on the other, a dense forest mixed with old and new growth trees, as well as rare plants call this thin provincial preserve home. We first learned of Rose Spit from Chris Walker, who you met back near the beginning of this season. He told us that the Spit was a must-see, and so we put it at the top of our list of places to visit during this 3 months long journey this season has covered. The Spit is a sandy finger of land that stretches north and east into the Hecate Strait and spends much of its time submerged in meters of ocean water. But catch it at the right time during low tide, and the experience is one that leaves an indelible impression. Being out on this thin finger of land between two currents, crashing into what felt like a fragile and precarious piece of earth, I found myself wrapped in both fear and awe. And it is that sense of precariousness when beholding the wonder of this place that I could all at once see why and how a story like that of the raven and the Haida could take on its significance. After visiting Ni Kun, we made tracks into the forest by following the directions given to us by a local back in Old Masset. Therein, we found a secluded grove of what looked like old-growth flora and spent a quiet night tucked within soft earth, velvet moss, and breathing some of the cleanest air we've ever inhaled. That would be our last night on Haida Gwaii, as the following evening we would need to get back on the ferry en route once again to Prince Rupert, BC, where from we would catch another ferry down the Inside Passage to Vancouver Island. And here, our story of our time in our yellow Troopy begins to draw to a close.
If you've followed our series for long, you know the struggle's always been finding a rig capable and reliable enough to take us to remote locales and back. Our dream since the summer of 2015 has been to travel this beautiful planet we call home in a self-contained four-wheel drive vehicle. But time after time, that dream has run up against confounding complications that seem to put our pursuit in a kind of perpetual pause. Either the vehicle was a mechanical rat's nest of problems, or the rig just didn't have enough space to accommodate us being able to continue working from the road, as remote freelance contracts is how we've been able to fund this entire endeavor. Finally, however, as we recounted at the start of this season, we came upon a rig that ticked all the boxes, thus facilitating and enabling us to engage in the journey we've shared with you over these last many months. The Troopy was, by all accounts, the best vehicle we'd ever traveled in, eclipsing the others in reliability, capability, ruggedness, and trustworthiness. I loved that truck in a way that, to this day, I still find difficult to express. But it, too, ran up against a complication, the most confounding we'd yet encountered.
So you can see the outside edge of the plate, and here's the telltale. This is where we were filling that weld slag.
Resolute to travel to South America alongside our friends Matt and Alex, who we did the Dempster with, we drove to Seattle, Washington, where we left the Troopy with a well-respected Land Cruiser shop to have them look over the vehicle, make a few adjustments, and prepare it for the Pan American Highway. With the truck in the shop, things at home took a turn for the worse as Petunia's health was quickly fading, forcing us to make a painful decision. So, on November 16th, 2018, exactly 16 years to the day we first laid eyes on her, we said goodbye to our sweet Petunia, bidding her luminescent spirit a tearful farewell and a safe journey over the Rainbow Bridge. A week later, I would receive a phone call from the shop asking me if I knew we were in possession of what appeared to be a VIN-swapped troop carrier. To that point, we had owned that yellow Troopy for 9 months, and I'd always wondered how it was that the previous owner and Maltec, the German company he represented, had managed to import a truck that seemed to me to be too new to import under the Imported Vehicle Safety Compliance Act of 1988, which essentially states that vehicles not approved for the U.S. market must be at least 25 years old to be eligible for importation. Our Troopy, having all the parts typical of a 78 series, did not appear to meet this standard, as the 78 came into production in 1999. And if my math is right, that was not 25 years ago. But the bill of lading showed it had been imported through the Port of Baltimore, and it cleared customs. It had Colorado tags, and it had a Colorado title. To me, the paper trail seemed to be all in order. From our perspective, upon purchase, we didn't have any concrete reason to suspect something was legally amiss. When we went to finalize the purchase of the Troopy, the previous owner emphatically declared the truck was a legally built and imported 75 series on 78 series suspension, and Maltec, who initially built our Troopy back in 2015, was still importing vehicles similar to ours. From what we knew of them, they were a reputable and well-respected business that built some of the best overland rigs we'd ever seen. With their expertise and infrastructure in Germany, what reason was there for them to do some scammy, ticky-tack shit like this? Nevertheless, from all appearances, it seemed as though someone had cut out the original 78 series VIN number and welded in another VIN that represented it as a 75 series from 1989. Heartbroken rage doesn't even begin to capture what we felt in that moment. That phone call kicked off a new chapter in our life where we spent the next 4 months trying to determine what was true about our Troopy and what could be done about it. We had a well-known Land Cruiser shop in western Colorado insert a borescope into the frame to verify whether the VIN had been tampered with, and by all appearances, it had been. Later, our friend Kevin of Lifestyle Overland, who was once a certified welding inspector and has a lot of knowledge about metallurgy, worked with us to verify what was what.
Corresponds with this section here, and you can kind of almost see this kind of vertical line going here, and it follows it across the back as well, and then it takes off this direction. It runs right along, right above this bend. It runs right through here. And then the same thing on the bottom. There's actually slag on the back side right here. And then it also passes this direction. So this section right here has been cut out and welded back in. And here's another interesting point. You see how heavy this pitting and rust is here?
Can we get down there?
You see how heavy this is? So this is really, really heavy pitting and rust all in this area.
Yeah.
And it's even been bondoed. You know, there's even body filler here to kind of disguise the fact that this is much more rusted than its neighboring steel.
His conclusion? The steel on the frame of our Troopy was fairly new, but the VIN plate steel, being so pitted and rusted, indicated it had come from another, much older steel frame. We met with the owner of Maltec at his house in Telluride, Colorado, and went over what we'd discovered.
The question is, what is the law really saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Taking Land Rover VIN number, little piece of metal, cutting it out and putting it in a TD4 from 2015. Yes, that's a VIN swap, in my idea,
That's
from
what
my
I mean.
knowledge.
That's what I mean.
So
what I'm saying is that we believe that VIN was welded in.
this one, I mean,
Reach behind there and you can feel the welds. I have a camera that we can put back there and you'll see the welds.
so this is the side. This is this. So am I on the right side? Yeah. This. So yeah, the thing is, we don't cut things out and put it in. There's no reason for us to do it.
Even with all our evidence, he insisted Maltec had built our truck on a 75 series chassis using 78 series parts. So why was the VIN plate like it was? No satisfactory explanation was ever forthcoming, and we never reached out to the previous owner to find out what he knew. But much to their immense credit, Maltec did admit that our truck had been built in such a way as to make it legally suspect, because the drivetrain of our Troopy, the combination of engine, gearbox, and suspension that were installed, didn't meet the regulatory parameters laid out in the Imported Vehicle Safety Compliance Act of 1988. All that to say, VIN swapped or not, our favorite rig to date was compromised from stem to stern. What we thought would be the vehicle that would take us around the world the one bearing the name of a legend, was, like our Vanagon Synchro before it, not to be. And here's where our strange tale enters into the utterly surreal. Even though Maltec were under no obligation to do so, they offered to take back our Troopy, and in exchange for it, they would build us a completely restored, completely legal land cruiser in which we could travel the planet. All done at no cost to us. We could not have envisioned a more fortuitous outcome to this most odd and confounding of circumstances. And so that's where our story turns to next. With the Troopy aboard a boat headed to Maltec in Germany, and Linus, Jessica, and myself aboard an airplane bound for Amsterdam, Holland, it was time to ready ourselves once more for the oncoming whirlwind of adventure. Traveling on a new continent in a 200 series Land Cruiser, loaned to us by Maltec, where for the next 9 months we would traverse Western Europe, still in pursuit of heart-opening experiences and the less traveled, and still abiding by our maxim that no matter the circumstances, no matter the difficulties, we are always and forever resolved to relentlessly live free and drive hard.
What happened, Linus? Did your armrest have to change gears?
Alright, Wanderers, that's it for this one. If you enjoyed it, consider supporting our channel with a subscription on Patreon or by heading over to our store and checking out the swag. Either way, we hope to see you guys in the next one.